Hello, my wonderful third graders. I hope you are having a fantastic day. We are still in our Unit 7 Astronomy, our solar system and beyond, and today we're going to talk about space exploration, which is really neat since we've been learning about the Mars rover, and I've watched a little bit of that, and it landed yesterday, so let's learn a little bit more about the history of space exploration. Some words you'll hear throughout the read aloud: module, a segment or section of a spacecraft designed to do a specific job; observatory, a building or place especially built for observing the stars, planets, and other space objects; probes, unmanned spacecraft sent to explore space and gather scientific information; reusable describes something, it's an adjective, and means able to be used again; spacecraft is a manned or unmanned vehicle designed to travel into space for research and exploration; space shuttle is a partly reusable manned spacecraft launched into space for research and exploration that returns to Earth and lands on a runway. And then a triumph is a special achievement, success, accomplishment, or victory. Triumph. What have we learned so far? What did we learn about Nicholas Copernicus in the previous lesson? He was a Polish astronomer and also a clergyman. He said that Earth moved in space. He proposed the heliocentric idea that the sun, not the Earth, was the center of the solar system. He opposed the geocentric view that said that Earth was the center of the universe. How was Copernicus able to come to these conclusions? Do you remember? He used a hypothesis, right? And he used his observations of how the planets moved and how they did a little bit of a loop. And it didn't make sense for it to be that they were going around the Earth. They must have been going around something else, right? What else have scientists discovered with the use of telescopes? Galaxies are moving away from one another. Stars are different colors. There are different shapes of galaxies. It's all things, the things that we've talked about so far. I think we're going to learn a little more today. Telescopes are only one way that astronomers learn about the universe. Another way is through space exploration. Space exploration also depends on astronauts in various kinds of spacecraft to explore space in different ways. The word spacecraft is both the singular and plural form used to describe vessels that are sent into space. There can be one spacecraft or many spacecraft. You wouldn't say spacecrafts. You just say spacecraft. The definition of the word astronaut: a person who is trained for a space flight. If we break apart the word astronaut, we can identify the word part astro, the prefix astro, meaning star. Astro means star. And what about the part not, the end of the word? It means stars and constellations. We hear the word navigate in there, and not means having to do with navigation. An astronaut is a space navigator. They navigate through space. Just think, Copernicus, with the help of other scientists before and after him, changed our understandings of astronomy when he discovered that the universe is not geocentric. Copernicus opened our eyes and minds to a whole different way of thinking about the universe. How were just a handful of people able to come up with an idea that changed the whole world? It's quite simple, really. Copernicus began by studying something he was really interested in: the night sky. Do you remember what geocentric means? Right? Geocentric means centered around the earth, right? And heliocentric meant centered around the sun. His interests led him to make careful observations, to ask questions, to work hard, to study, to think logically, to come up with new answers, and to build upon the work of other scientists before him. His willingness to ask questions, even when he had to stand alone with his ideas, led Copernicus to make an important scientific discovery: that our solar system is actually heliocentric, or sun-centered. Okay. All of science is based upon careful observations of the world and a willingness to ask questions about it. Asking questions allows us to come up with new ideas, and new ideas lead to a better understanding about how the world works. That's what the process of science is all about. So whenever you observe the world around you and ask questions about what you see, you should be proud of yourself because you are thinking like a scientist. Take a moment now to think of a question you have about the world and how it works. Maybe one day you will discover the answers to your questions. Not too many years after Copernicus died, the telescope was invented. As you heard in the previous read aloud, Galileo was one of the first astronomers to build and use a telescope. Very soon, many astronomers began using telescopes to take a closer look at the stars. This gave them new information, and so astronomers were able to learn even more about the universe and gather more information, more evidence that supported Copernicus's heliocentric theory. As you heard earlier, astronomers discovered the planet Neptune fewer than 200 years ago in 1846, when they were finally able to see it with a more powerful telescope. Astronomers continued building different types of and more powerful telescopes, which led to an even better understanding of space and more questions about it too. Discovering more objects similar in size to Pluto led scientists to ask again, how should Pluto be classified? With more information available, astronomers came up with a brand new answer to that question. Today, telescopes that astronomers use are usually located in areas far away from cities. Where there are cities, there is also a lot of light. And when there is a lot of light on Earth, it is harder to see the light of the stars. Light made by humans that hinders or blocks our view of the stars is called light pollution. Besides building telescopes far away from light pollution, astronomers also like to build telescopes on high mountains. You might think it's so that astronomers can get closer to the stars, but it's not really that much closer. An observatory is a building designed especially for observing the stars, planets, and other space objects. Placing an observatory high on a mountain allows astronomers to get above as much of Earth's atmosphere as possible. And as the Earth's atmosphere thins out in high places, astronomers can more clearly look at the light of the stars. A more powerful telescope was built for the Lowell Observatory in Arizona for the purpose of finding Pluto. Astronomers thought that Pluto existed before they even saw it. There appeared to be something in space beyond Uranus and Neptune that was exerting a strong gravitational pull on these planets. Astronomers searched for 25 years before they finally discovered Pluto. But there's another way that scientists are now able to place telescopes even higher than the highest mountain. Telescopes are launched into space. But how? We're about to find out. That's right, scientists now use rockets to escape Earth's surface gravity. The power of rockets enables spacecraft to launch telescopes into space. Once beyond Earth's atmosphere, the telescopes can study the universe more closely and clearly than ever before. Some spacecraft are held in orbit around Earth by its gravity. Other spacecraft have ventured beyond the reach of Earth's gravity to explore other parts of the solar system. Telescopes and cameras aboard the space probes Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 have spent the last 35 years gathering information about Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and the outermost reaches of our solar system. Telescopes that are launched into space are literally out of this world, and they are able to take pictures of the universe that are also out of this world. The Hubble Space Telescope is the most famous telescope ever to be launched into space. It was carried into orbit by a space shuttle in 1990 and now orbits about 350 miles above the surface of Earth. Because there's very little light pollution in orbit, and because Earth's atmosphere does not get in the way and cause distortion, this powerful telescope helps scientists see deeper into the universe than ever before. The Hubble Space Telescope has provided scientists with new information and fantastic pictures about our own solar system, distant stars, faraway galaxies, and other celestial bodies and occurrences. Space shuttles are manned, winged spacecraft that carry supplies, astronauts, and equipment into space and then return to Earth to be used again. The last NASA space shuttle to fly was retired in 2011. Here's an image of distant galaxies that was taken with the Hubble Space Telescope. So that's an actual picture. That's beautiful. Look at those galaxies. Wow. New discoveries in science, such as the telescope, always lead to new questions. For most of human history, many of the questions and theories people had about space came from simply gazing up at the night sky. People could look up at the moon and the planets and the stars, but these celestial bodies were completely beyond reach. Once humans invented a way to fly in airplanes, this was only a little more than 100 years ago, the question soon became, can we fly beyond the Earth's atmosphere all the way into space? The exciting answer to that question was a loud yes. In 1957, a group of countries, then called the Soviet Union, which included Russia, sent the first satellite made by humans into space. The satellite was called Sputnik 1, and it was an aluminum sphere that was only about the size of a beach ball. This small artificial satellite began a whole new revolution in space exploration. Can you guess what scientists' next question was? It was this. If we can send a satellite into space, can we also send a living being into space? A month later, Russia sent a dog named Liku into space. Liku was the first living being to ever go to space. After Liku's mission, several more dogs were successfully sent into space. Can you guess what the next question was? What do you think they asked about sending to space next? Right. If we can send a dog into space, can we send a human into space? In 1961, the Soviets answered this question with a resounding, enthusiastic yes. The first human being to go into space was Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin aboard the spacecraft Vostok 1. Cosmonauts Yuri Gagarin orbited the globe in Vostok 1 for 108 minutes before returning to Earth. So cosmonaut is a Russian word for astronaut. If Yuri Gagarin started at 12 o'clock noon, 108 minutes later, it would have been 1:48 or 12 minutes before 2. He was in space for just under 2 hours. Could you imagine how exciting that was to hear about? Oh, here's the dogs that were in space on some stamps. They were famous dogs. And here are some Americans that went to space that we're about to hear about. With this new triumph of accomplishment, scientists asked a new question. If we can send a human being into space, can we also send one to land on the moon? What do you think the answer was? A triumphant yes. In 1969, the United States sent 3 astronauts into space: Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. These astronauts traveled to the moon in a spacecraft called Apollo 11, which had 3 sections. The lunar module, or section of the Apollo 11, was named the Eagle, and it landed on the moon with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin aboard. Meanwhile, astronaut Michael Collins orbited the moon in the Apollo 11 command center module, which was called the Columbia. A third service module provided power, oxygen, and water. So here you can see the space module and the astronaut on space, or on the moon, walking on the moon. Apollo 11 modules, service, command, and lunar. Which of the modules do you think was the main one? So here's a picture of what it looked like. And you can see where the astronauts sat when they were in it, right there. It looks like maybe the service module is the main one, the command module. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first human being ever to walk on the moon. Soon after his feet, which were inside his spacesuit, touched the surface, Neil Armstrong spoke these famous words: "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Soon after Armstrong said these famous words, Buzz Aldrin joined him to walk on the surface, where they bounced and hopped to get around because of the moon's low gravity. The astronauts had to plan their movements 6 or 7 steps ahead because movement on the moon is different from movement on Earth. They also discovered that the fine moon soil was quite slippery. Together, Armstrong and Aldrin collected about 48 pounds of moon rocks and brought them back to Earth to be studied. They took many photographs and performed experiments to learn about the moon. Here's Aldrin on the moon. And you can see in his helmet, you can see Neil Armstrong, in his reflection on his helmet. That's an awesome picture. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin rejoined pilot Michael Collins aboard Apollo 11's Columbia, where they lived while in space, and they all returned safely to Earth. Thanks to Earth's gravity, the Columbia came back through Earth's atmosphere and splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. There are lots of pictures of the Columbia in magazines and on the internet. And someday, if you ever visit Washington, D.C., you can see the Columbia at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. In the past, spacecraft like the Apollo 11 were only able to fly into space and back one time. They were not reusable. But with advances in technology, reusable spacecraft have been developed. Reusing the space shuttles has saved time, money, and valuable resources. As scientists continue to explore space in the future, we will continue to better understand both space and the universe. And as we continue to learn more, you can be sure that there will be many new questions that will be asked. Maybe you'll be asking and even answering some of them. All right. Why are the Sputnik 1 and Apollo 11 trips into space considered triumphs? Why were they triumphs for human beings in space travel? Sputnik 1 was the first satellite to be sent into space, and Apollo 11 was the first spacecraft to successfully take astronauts to the moon. Sounds pretty cool. Sounds like a triumph. From its launch until its return to Earth, what effects did gravity have on Apollo 11 and its astronauts? How did gravity help them? Right? Apollo 11 needed powerful rockets to be launched in the opposite direction of Earth's gravitational pull, while on the moon, the astronauts had to learn to move with less gravity. And then the Apollo 11 was able to return to Earth with the help of Earth's gravity. Pulled it down. What factors are important to consider when choosing the site of an observatory? There's two important things to think about. Being high on a mountain reduces the amount of distortion from the atmosphere, and being far away from the light pollution of cities provides darker skies, so it's easier to see the planets and the stars in outer space. Okay, so think about this question. If you had a chance to work on or participate in some aspect of space exploration or space travel, what would you choose? Why would that part interest you? So would you like to be an astronaut? Would you like to be an engineer building a rover? Would you like to be a mathematician in computing the different algorithms that they need for their different landings? Would you like to be like space mission control? So many jobs that have to do with outer space. Our word for the day is triumph. In the read aloud you heard, with this new triumph or accomplishment, scientists asked a new question. Say the word triumph. A triumph is a special achievement, success, accomplishment, or victory. Writing his first chapter book was a triumph for Julian. Have you ever experienced a triumph? What was your triumph that you experienced? All right, third graders, I hope you enjoyed learning a little more about space exploration.